Okay, hello to all of you. Let's discuss chapter number 5, and chapter number 5 is about energy and photosynthesis. So let me go into the slideshow mode. Okay, so in this chapter we are going to talk about energy, what is energy, and some of the laws which govern energy in our universe and the process of photosynthesis. So basically, United States is a larger consumer of fossil fuels. So basically, we are using a lot of fossil fuels, and fossil fuels are non-renewable. So there is a need to have the new kinds of sources of energy, which are called the renewable sources. So United States leads the world in petroleum consumption. So we are using a lot of petroleum, and is the second largest net consumer of fossil fuels behind China. Fossil fuels are considered non-renewable because they take millions of years to create by natural processes. So as we continue to deplete fossil fuels, new energy sources are being developed that reduce our demand on petroleum and other fossil fuels. Because we are using so much of the fossil fuels and petroleum, there is a need to develop new energy sources. So we are now going in the direction of finding the energy sources which are renewable. So which includes like solar. People put a lot of solar panels and all that. They are making use of the solar energy, wind energy. Then there's a biofuels, hydroelectric, and getting energy from water. So we are now using a lot of trying to get the energy from the renewable sources. And we are now going to talk about basically how we can get the energy from these biofuels. So basically the future of fuel is now the living organisms, algae. So that's why we are going to talk about photosynthesis in this chapter, because we are talking about biofuels, the energy which we can get from the living organisms. So one of the candidate is algae. So there are different kinds of photosynthetic organisms. So we know that plants, they can do photosynthesis, and there are some bacteria which can do the photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a process in which the light energy of the sun is converted into the chemical energy. And this process is possible because these photosynthetic organisms, they have some special pigments in them, and these pigments help in entrapping the sun's light, and through this process of photosynthesis, this light energy is converted into the chemical energy, and that chemical energy we can use as the biofuels. So algae have the capacity, have the ability to capture the energy of sunlight and convert it into usable form of energy, much in the form of oils, ideally suited for making fuels. So you can see these are the algae cells, and inside the algae cells there's a production of these oils. Okay, so these are lipid filled compartments which appear yellow. So all the yellow things you see are algae, and I have posted one video also, you can watch that, which talks about all this, how the future is going towards making use of these algal cells and producing biofuels which are renewable sources. So let's talk about the energy basics. Algae and plants get energy from the sun. Okay, they trap the energy and store it in the molecules. Biofuel produced high in chemical energy. So it's basically talking all about the process of photosynthesis. So algae, plants, and there are some bacteria which have these special pigments in them, and because of these special pigments in them, they can entrap sun's light, and through the process of photosynthesis, they can convert the light energy into the chemical energy. So basically, what do these photosynthetic organisms need? They need carbon dioxide, which is there in the atmosphere. They need sunlight, and they need some nutrients. Okay, so basically, if we talk about algae as the future biofuel, which is renewable source, these algae cells, they can be these some of the companies, they can have some bioreactors, and they can grow these algae in the bioreactors. They can provide carbon dioxide, sunlight, and some nutrient to the algae, and the algae cells are going to grow. And these algae cells, so the algae cells are grown in open ponds or bioreactors with added nutrients and access to sunlight and carbon dioxide. algae cells are harvested and separated into the component parts. So once you have the algal cells, you can get all these things from the algal cells. You can get the oil from the algal cells. So it's shown here, oil that can be converted into biofuels. You can get carbohydrates, and those carbohydrates can be fermented for biofuels, burned for electricity. You can get proteins, and those proteins can be used for animal feed. Then we can also get the cell wall biomass, which can be burned from cell wall biomass from the algal cells, which can be burned for electricity and heat used for organic fertilizers. So many things we can get from the algal cells. So this is the direction of fuels, and this is the current direction in which the fuels are going. So we are trying to get the renewable sources of the energy, which is the biofuels, the fuels which we can get from the photosynthetic organisms like the algae. Now we're going to talk about some of the basics of energy, what energy is. So what is energy? It's basically the capacity to do work. So we talked about this in chapter number 4 also. So basically energy is required at the organism level as well as it's required at the cellular level. Energy cannot be created. So basically energy is neither destroyed nor created. The total energy stays the same in the universe. And we get the energy by eating food. So we eat 3 times food in a day. That's all because we need the energy. And we have already discussed these things in the last chapter, that the energy is actually in the bonds. By the catabolic reactions, the bonds are broken. So we eat macromolecules in our food, proteins, carbohydrate, lipids, and they are macromolecules, they're polymers, they're made of monomers, and these monomers are all connected to each other by the bonds, and by the catabolic reactions with the help of the enzymes, these bonds are broken and the energy is released, and this energy is used to perform the work. So energy cannot be created or destroyed, energy can change form, and energy is conserved. So here is example how we say the energy is conserved. First of all, let's talk about some of the different kinds of energies. Potential energy is the energy which is stored in the chemical bonds. So it is the energy which is because of the structure as well as the location. Kinetic energy is the energy which is associated with the movement. So you can see this is a cyclist who has eaten some food. So the energy is in the food in the form of the in the chemical bond, or the energy is in the form of chemical energy. And as this cyclist is doing the cycling, that chemical energy which is there in the food is converted into the kinetic energy, and so basically chemical energy gets converted into the kinetic energy. And when the chemical energy, which is the potential energy, is getting converted into kinetic energy, it's a kind of an energy transformation taking place here. The energy is never created, not destroyed, but energy always keeps on changing its form. Energy is transformed, and in every transformation there is some energy which is lost as heat. So this is what it is being shown here. This chemical energy which is there in the food is converted into chemical energy, and some energy is being lost as heat. So this is all talking about that a cyclist takes in potential chemical energy in the form of the energy bar. That's what this cyclist is eating. The cyclist digests the bar, chemical bonds are broken down, and stored potential energy is released. And as the cyclist climbs a hill, the potential energy is transformed into kinetic energy and heat. So with each energy transformation, some energy is lost as heat. Okay. So this was something basic about energy. Now we're going to talk about photosynthesis. So we are going to talk about the process of photosynthesis and how in the process of photosynthesis light energy is converted into the chemical energy. So these are the photosynthetic organisms, which include plants, algae, and the bacteria. And these are the organisms which carry out the process of photosynthesis. And by the process of photosynthesis, these organisms, they take in sun's light, and they take carbon dioxide, and they convert the light energy into the chemical energy. And then this chemical energy can be used as an immediate source of energy, or it can be stored in the form of oils, or it can be in the form of the cell structures. So let's talk about so the ultimate source of energy is the sun, and the two kinds of organisms, autotrophs and heterotrophs. Autotrophs are those organisms which can capture and transform the energy of the sunlight. by photosynthesis, and heterotrophs are the ones which can obtain energy by eating other organisms. So the process of photosynthesis can be summarized as these photosynthetic organisms, they take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water, and they take sunlight and they convert it into glucose and oxygen. So the photosynthetic organisms, they are giving us two things. They are giving us glucose as well as they are giving us oxygen. So these photosynthetic organisms, they're converting light energy into chemical energy, and that chemical energy is in the form of glucose. Glucose is an organic molecule, and also by the process of photosynthesis, water is split, and because of the splitting of water, we get oxygen. So by the process of photosynthesis, we are getting two things. We are getting oxygen as well as we are getting this organic molecule called glucose. So in the process of photosynthesis, you can see here, it takes place in the chloroplast in the plants, and this process of photosynthesis can be divided into two phases. First phase is called photophase and second phase is called synthesis phase. The photophase is called photophase because it involves getting the photons of sun's energy. And in this process, basically two things happen. Number one, water is split and oxygen is produced. This is first thing. And second important thing which takes place is because in the chloroplast, in the chloroplast there are thylakoids, and in the thylakoid membranes, there is a pigment called chlorophyll, and there are electrons in the chlorophyll molecule. It entraps sun's light, and there are some electrons which get excited in the chlorophyll molecule, and eventually there are a lot of reactions takes place which we are not going to talk in detail in this class. Eventually there's a formation of two very high energy chemicals called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and NADPH. So the energy is converted into these two forms, NADPH and the ATP, and then in the second phase, which is called synthesis phase, NADPH and ATP is used, and the carbon dioxide which is there in the atmosphere, it's taken, it's fixed, and it is converted into the organic molecules called glucose. So this is what basically the process of photosynthesis is. It involves two steps. First phase is called photophase, or it's also called light reactions because it involves sun's light energy. And second phase is dark phase or synthesis phase. In the synthesis phase, the energy which is there in the ATP and NADP is converted into the organic molecules like glucose. And in this phase, carbon dioxide is fixed. So second phase is also called dark phase or synthesis phase. It's also called Kelvin cycle, and Kelvin cycle is on the basis of the name of the scientist. So photosynthesis occurs in chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are the organelles which are present in the cells of plants and the algae. So this is the chloroplast you can see, and these are the thylakoids. So light energy is captured in chemical form, and chemical energy is used to generate glucose molecules using carbon atoms of carbon dioxide. So chlorophyll is the pigment present in the green parts of the plant. It absorbs photons of light energy. So you can see here, this is sun, and the chlorophyll, which is a pigment, it absorbs the photons of the light energy. It absorbs photons of this light energy, and the electrons in the chlorophyll, they are excited, and eventually they lead to the production of these two chemicals called ATP and NADPH. So chlorophyll pigments within the internal chloroplast membrane absorb photons. Chlorophyll electrons become excited and enter a series of reactions that generate energy carrying molecules called ATP and electron carrying molecule called NADPH. And these NADPH and ATP, they are used in the synthesis phase, and also in the light reactions, water gets split and oxygen is produced. And in the second phase, which is a synthesis phase, carbon dioxide is fixed, and the energy from these two energy carrying molecules is used, and carbon dioxide is converted into glucose. So second phase is carbon synthesis reactions. Energy from the breakdown of ATP and Electrons from NADPH are used in the carbon reactions to fix carbon dioxide into organic sugar molecule, a form of stored chemical energy. So carbon dioxide enter plant cells from the atmosphere. So carbon dioxide is entering. The carbon atoms are incorporated into organic sugar molecules. So this is what basically is the photosynthesis. So all what is written here I have already explained. So so photosynthesis captures carbon dioxide gas from the air, incorporates carbon atoms into sugar, and this process is called carbon fixation. So in this process, conversion of inorganic gaseous carbon, there's a conversion of inorganic gaseous carbon into the organic molecule. So that's all about this chapter. If you have any question, please let me know.